We are going to
NUKE.
Pause for effect.
Yes, that did really happen. The American government did attempt to literally nuke the moon. And as you probably could have already guessed, it was all in an attempt to shit on the heads of communists. I mean, think about it. In terms of communism, the moon it's pretty sus. I mean, it's gray. No one seems to own the means of production there. And there is not a single McDonald's or pair of blue jeans in sight. There's really not much separating the surface of the moon from that of East Berlin, socioeconomically speaking. To understand how in the burger-eating, bald eagle-screeching, flag-waving Ford F-1 that the Americans seriously got to planning to nuke the moon, a plan which you can basically taste the lead poisoning in these boomers' brains just hearing about. We need to talk about a little ditty called the Space Race, which is one of my all-time favorite races. I mean, if we were ranking races, that one's gotta be an S tier, for sure. I should probably cut that out. April 30th, 1945, Berlin, Germany. The Soviets are closing in on the Führer bunker of a quirky little angry man with a very funny mustache.
I'm Hitler. I'm in a bunker. It's the end of the war!
When he decided to engage Plan Z, shoot himself in the face, and then promptly move to Argentina. 3 months later, the United States Air Force shocked the world and really put a damper on the workday of the populations of Hiroshima and Nagasaki by dropping the world's first nuclear bombs on Japan. The very same weaponry that they would later plan to use to nuke our dear friend, the moon, and also killed hundreds of thousands of innocent non-military civilians, women, and children, America style. President Truman then announced the unconditional surrender of Japan on August 14th, 1945, the end of World War II, and a new period of peace and prosperity for the globe, if you ignore the fact that now there are bombs that could literally end the entirety of human civilization and plunge said peaceful and prosperous globe into a rad roach-infested nuclear winter.
War never changes.
This then promptly caused every recently returned American soldier to immediately drop his pants and celebratorily impregnate all of their respective wives and girlfriends that hadn't already gotten knocked up by the milkman while their husbands were at war. This then led to the so-called baby boom and the introduction of the chief villains of the late 20th and early 21st century, the baby boomers. And while this was arguably a more catastrophic event for modern society than blowing up the moon, it's not the kind of boom that we're here to talk about today. So, now, at this exact brief point in history, right after the end of World War II, the US and the Soviets were actually buddies, or at least frenemies, like Drake and Josh.
I'm really glad I had sex with my stepbrother, Drake. We had this contest to see who could suck cock longer.
But that pretty quickly dissolved into being regular enemies, also like Drake and Josh in real life.
I bet Josh my allowance that he couldn't suck my penis, but he did it. I came after 2 minutes.
This is because, although the Soviet Union was, technically speaking, part of the Allied forces fighting the Axis powers of World War II along the United States, Great Britain, and France, it was also the only country pushing for, every other country in the world to eventually embrace the utopian ideal of communism. So it led to it kind of being the odd man out when it came to, deciding the economic future of all of the formerly Nazi-controlled areas that were now to be occupied by the Allies after funny mustache man Kurt Cobained himself. Plus, a month after Japan surrendered, a fella, obviously named Igor, flipped on the Soviets and informed the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, of all people, that the Soviets already had a secret spy network across America and Canada, which was not very chill with America and Canada. And a few months later, in a re-election speech from Joseph Stalin, he went on about how capitalism and imperialism make future wars inevitable, which is also a very concerning statement. So, the capitalists were not, very big fans of that, and slowly but surely, the West and the East, headed by the United States and Soviet Union, became two opposing world superpowers locked in a perpetual dick-measuring contest as to whether the future of the world would be full of borscht and commie blocks or burgers and highways. In an attempt for one to gain the edge over the other, both the Soviets and Americans took a look at all the recently unemployed Nazi scientists and quickly took them, they grabbed them up, and they put them to work making missiles. Missiles that would soon develop the capacity capacity to launch shit into that big black thing up past the sky, space. After the world entered into the jukebox and hair grease-filled decade that was the 1950s, the generally accepted first spark of interest into space travel began, as pretty much like all of the space race was, by the Soviets. In 1951, when rocketry engineer and aggressively Russian name-having man Mikhail Tikhon-Ravov published an article titled Flight to the Moon in a Soviet newspaper. Although the theoretical concept of humans flying into space began soon after humans started flying into the sky, and the Soviet founding father of rocketry and aeronautics, and even more aggressively Russian name-having man Konstantin Tribalosky, let's say Tribalosky, was publishing scientific papers and proposals for space travel all the way back in like 1903. These were mostly just thought of as crack-smoking, pie-in-the-sky visions of the distant future. Until the two great superpowers of the world started frothing at the mouth for any possible opportunity to accurately measure the size of their respective male reproductive organs against the other. In that 1951 article, Mikhail described a two-man spaceship capable of interplanetary travel, and what the technology that he thought must be developed was to create it, and ended the article saying, quote, "We do not have long to wait. I'm Russian, I say Russian things. Borscht and vodka. We do not have long to wait. We can assume that the bold dream of Konstantin Tribalosky will be realized within the next 10 to 15 years. The United States, in what would be a running theme through most of the space race, then followed second to the Soviets in 1952, publishing a 7-article magazine series with the delicate and vague title, Man Will Conquer Space Soon. The series detailed plans for manned spaceflight that were being spearheaded in the United States by one of those former Nazi rocket scientists I mentioned that we copped after the war, Werner Magnus Maximilian Führer von Braun. That's his real name. The dude he must have had some Latin ancestry with all those names. And I cannot stress enough that, like, at least in the US, NASA, it was all Nazis, dude. NASA was entirely Nazis. They f***ed up finding any Lebensraum in Europe, so they just said, F*** it, Fourth Reich in space. There's already no Jews on the moon. Let's just do that. Would have saved them a lot of time. And finally, in March of '55, the villainous Disney Corporation released an animation titled Man in Space to an audience of over 40 million people, which really blew air on the spark of these tiddlywink small-time magazine articles to ignite a full-blown fire of space mania among both the public and the governments of the US and USSR. The US quickly made the first official move of the space race 2 months later by formally announcing its intention to put an artificial satellite into orbit, before the Soviets actually did successfully put an artificial satellite into orbit. Yes, in 1957, the Soviets successfully launched the first piece of future sky-blackening space debris in the form of Sputnik 1. That's right, while the US was busy not putting their money where their mouth was, the Soviets, they didn't have to worry about that problem. Money, that's like their whole thing, is that they don't like money. They just had mouths, and they were very busy not putting food in the mouths too. So they just went and actually did the thing. They really launched some funny named metal shit up into the float zone. And now the race was on. 4 months later, on January 19th, 1958, America would do its part to turn the planet's exosphere into the intro scene from WALL-E by launching its first satellite, Explorer 1. This is a satellite that I, and probably also you, have never heard about until right now, because the Soviets already did it first. So no one gave a shit. Nobody at all. Okay, cool. You did it too. Wow, you want like a participation trophy or something? America, get good. And so, America promptly began the long journey of getting good by sitting down at the science table, doing just a shit ton of cocaine, and feverishly trying to figure out what they could do right now, right this second, in space, before the Soviets this time. Then they thought of nothing, absolutely nothing, considered asking the CIA what they thought, remembered that they were all busy kidnapping veterans and giving them LSD to try and crack mind control and putting microphones into a cat, and decided to instead ask the Air Force what they thought that they should do.
They asked the United States Air Force what they thought, and their first suggestion was to nuke the moon and make a mushroom cloud so big that you could see it from Earth. You know, you can't lose a race to the moon if there is no moon. That's just math.
And hearing this, all the lead-poisoned, recently re-employed Nazis at the newly formed NASA said,
"Let him cook! Let him cook now!"
So just so we're all on the same page, the United States government asked the Air Force what they should do about this problem. And the United States Air Force took a moment to think. They looked at the Soviet Union, saw that they were going to land on the moon first, and then looked up at the moon and said...
And the thing is, too, that these lead-poisoned idiots were so lead-poisoned and so just frothing at the mouth to get cucked by the Soviets that this plan to nuke the moon wasn't even an original goddamn idea. Just like the satellite, they got it from the Soviets. To quote from first-hand and eternally reliable source Wikipedia, at the time of the American Nuking the Moon project's conception, newspapers were reporting a rumor that the Soviet Union was planning to detonate a hydrogen bomb on the moon. According to press reports in late 1957, an anonymous source had divulged to a United States Secret Service agent that the Soviets planned to commemorate the anniversary of the October Revolution by causing a nuclear explosion on the moon to coincide with a lunar eclipse on 7 November. It's 7 November. God, they f***ed me up by putting the number first. Why do they do that? Did a British man write this? Disgusting. And guys, this, come on. This is f***ing embarrassing.
It's f***ing embarrassing!
And of all the ideas to steal, too, like, guys. And the other thing is, as far as we know, the Soviets weren't even actually planning on nuking the moon at the time that these articles were being released in the United States about the Soviets planning to nuke the moon, at least. The Soviets did also make a plan to nuke the moon called Project E4, since lead poisoning was not exclusive to the United States, but that didn't happen until like January of 1958. Which is around the same time, if not slightly after, the American moon nuke plan was conceived over there. I think that this is possibly because the Russians are, as we all know, historically the world's best chess players, and saw that articles were coming out in the US saying that the Soviets, them, were going to nuke the moon. They had just launched a satellite first before, the Americans cucked them like crazy, and they knew that Americans are crazy capitalist pigs, saw the fake article about the Soviets nuking the moon first that the Americans themselves released, and said, okay, yeah, the Americans are definitely going to nuke the fucking moon. I guess we have to do it first, guys. I guess we have to do this. Honestly, if I'm being conspiracy pilled here, this entire thing might have just been a game of 3D chess from either the Americans or more likely the Soviets to get the other one to think that they were going to nuke the moon. Like, to get the other side to actually be fucking retarded enough to nuke the fucking moon just for the purpose of doing it before the other team, and make themselves look like complete and total assholes by, again, nuking the moon. But honestly, both countries got way too far into the development stages for nuking the moon for that to be true. So wouldn't have wasted the resources there, Also, the Soviet plan was more so to, land on the moon first before the Americans, and because recording technology wasn't at the place in 1958 to live stream that shit to Twitch like the Americans did in 1969, their idea was that they just set off a nuclear bomb there on the moon to prove that they had actually landed on it to the public, but they didn't. They didn't do that, so. A lot of you lovely viewers probably correctly assume that I cannot read. The rumors are true, but I recently learned how just so I could read today's sponsor, The Book. Yes, it is called The Book, and it is probably the most important book that you'll ever own, because it is the ultimate guide to rebuilding civilization. Really, guys, if you ever buy anything from an advertisement, this is the thing. I am actually genuinely so happy that I have this item. It's going in my go bag for when the world inevitably inevitably falls into anarchy after our civilization collapses due to corporate and personal greed, climate change, nuclear Armageddon, zombie apocalypse. They're all coming in the near future, folks. And after they do, you're gonna be really happy that you have this thing, because it teaches you everything from basic survival, like how to make fire and rope, how to distill water with stuff that you can easily collect in nature, build a basic dwelling, drying and smoking meats, all the way up to easy to understand, detailed instructions on how to make reinforced concrete, the combustion engine, glue and duct tape, a pen and pencil. To put it short, this book is more than 400 pages of the most necessary information that you will ever need. That's right, I said it. Really, I've never, and probably will never, have a sponsor so closely aligned with this channel. This thing is awesome, whether you're actually concerned with needing to survive and thrive after an apocalypse like me, or just genuinely curious about engineering, history, outdoorsmanship. This is the perfect gift for yourself or anyone else in your life who loves to learn critical and necessary information. The book itself is absolutely beautiful, looks great on a bookshelf, and the smell of this thing, I mean, just oh my god. And the best part for my illiterate ass, personally, is the absolutely gorgeous illustrations that are incredibly helpful for visualizing how to do and build all of the stuff that this book somehow managed to both explain in detail and in a way that my puny monkey brain can actually understand perfectly. I genuinely love this product and can't recommend that you pick one up for yourself and your loved ones enough. It comes with free shipping to the US, UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, and a 30-day money-back guarantee. So there's really no reason not to click the link in the description and get yourself a copy right now. And if you want to support this channel and save some money on this amazing purchase, which you do, use my code NECESSARY10 at checkout to get 10% off and start learning literally everything from the ultimate book on how to survive after the apocalypse and rebuild civilization. It genuinely might save your life. And so formerly began the American project to nuke the moon, which they would name Project A119, also known in the CIA tradition of naming their terrible, awful, illegal crimes against God the most benign shit imaginable, a study of lunar research flights. Yes, nuking the moon is indeed a study of lunar research flights. Studying what happens when a lunar research flight drops a nuke on the goddamn moon. But also, like, if the point in naming that, as it clearly seems that it was to, like, make it not seem like they were planning to nuke the moon, why in the f*** would this be the insignia for the plan? This image of a blimp and a goddamn mushroom cloud. Like, did no one inform the art department of the name and the fact that they're trying to make it not look like they're gonna drop a nuke on them? How did this happen? Why did they? If you want them to think it's researching lunar flights, why is a giant nuclear explosion the most prominent thing on the goddamn report? Were you guys just eating lead at this point? Was there paint chips in a little bowl in the break room next to the cocaine donuts and coffee pot full of LSD? So, in addition to von Braun and all the other Nazi scientists now hot on the case of nuking the moon before the Ruskies, which, okay, pause. Do you think if the Russians did nuke the moon, that the Americans would then actually, like, also do it second, like, again, like they did by launching the satellite? Because that would be the most pathetic thing that I could ever imagine. Okay, like just nuking the moon, just simply because the Soviets did it first. You know what I'm saying? So, in addition to all of the NASA Nazis, the U.S. government also pulled in renowned astronomer Gerard Cuvier and his doctoral student at the time, a little-known pipsqueak by the name of Carl Sagan.
I'm Carl Sagan, and I'm a very respected scientist. I love space. You know that.
Yes, the United States hired a bunch of Nazis and Carl goddamn Sagan, the TV show guy that the Muppets did an intro for, to nuke the moon. I was gonna do an entirely different topic for this month's video, guys. I had it like halfway done, heard about this, flipped over my desk, and immediately dropped everything to do this topic instead. What the hell? What the f? Also, that means that Carl Sagan's resume includes being one of the most influential science TV shows of all time, working with Nazis to nuke the moon, and being responsible for NASA's other quirky project to give dolphins LSD and then jerk them off to try and talk to aliens.
Number 1, jerking off dolphins. And number 2, giving them acid. And you know what, John? When I said let's talk to fucking dolphins, I didn't mean let's teach them to speak English. Let's learn their language. You go to Japan, and kidnap a Japanese man and start jerking him off and giving him fucking acid and then ask him to learn English?
The guy's been around the block. That's all I'm saying. He's been around the block.
Oh yeah, sure, Carl. Who are you gonna jerk off in this experiment? Aliens? An owl? A partridge? What's it gonna be, Carl?
I have another video on that one as well. The whole NASA Dolphin LSD happy ending project. Please watch it because I really need the ad revenue. Seriously, I am completely broke. Please support me on Patreon or donate via Cash App or Venmo with the QR codes on screen. Seriously, I'm desperate. I'm gonna have to start selling feet pics soon. Probably tell I'm in a new studio. There's a reason for that. It's my bedroom. I'm broke. Also, if anyone would be interested in me doing a live stream soon, where you guys could hang out and ask me some questions, let me know in the comments. So all the Nazis and Carl Sagan saw it like this. We launch an ICBM, intercontinental ballistic missile. In this case, I guess it would be an interplanetary ballistic missile, although the moon isn't another planet either. So what would you call that? What is that? They launch a rocket with a nuke on it onto the unlit dark side of the moon on like a half moon night or something where the dark part was facing the Earth. And the idea was that the explosion would be so big, so huge, that everyone could see it from Earth. Well, everyone on the half that would be, have the moon be visible because it was nighttime. Just a giant fireworks show of biblical scale that would probably confuse the fuck out of 90% of people that saw it. I mean, that is Armageddon shit right there, to just see a giant explosion on the moon with absolutely no context. You're just laying in your all-steel American-built truck with your sweetheart, smooching at premarital sex point.
Don't rush me, Katie. I'm just not ready.
And then the fucking moon explodes. You're getting cock-blocked. I'm sorry. Your cock is getting blocked by the U.S. government nuking the moon.
Just cock-block McLovin. Okay, he's our friend. We don't do that. We should be guiding his cock, not blocking it.
Unless you could parlay that into like the world is ending, I guess we don't have to use a condom now direction, in which case, good for you. But sorry about 9 months from now when the world didn't actually end, and now you just got a sticky little mouth to feed from knocking up Ethel or Gwendolyn or whatever women were named in the 50s.
You can name your kid Football.
The government also ideally wanted the explosion to, again, be so big that it created a new crater on the surface of the moon that would also be visible from Earth. Forever, just really poke the eye out of the man in the moon and leave a permanent reminder that America put a hole in the moon. So don't f with us, okay? We put a hole in the moon. We are loco, SA. So initially, NASA wanted to send a real big boy hydrogen bomb up to the moon to get the most bang out of the fireworks show as they could. But the Air Force said that the bomb would be much too heavy to actually make it on the rocket to the moon. So they eventually decided to instead use an M25 warhead that would have a 1.7 kiloton explosion. And for context, the smaller of the bombs dropped on Japan, Little Boy, which crazy f***ing name for a nuclear bomb that turned an entire city into irradiated soot, by the way, but so is Fat Man, to be fair. Little Boy was like a 15 kiloton bomb, so several times more powerful than this moon bomb they were planning. So it was just gonna be a tiny weeny whittle guy. Okay, he can't hurt nobody. Look at him. He's so cute. He's basically a mini nuke from Fallout. That can't be that bad for the moon, right? That just builds character. Half of the reason for choosing this teeny weeny nukey pookie was, as mentioned, the whole weight thing of it all. And the other was the incredibly real possibility that if the rocket failed, or if their trajectory was like very slightly off and the rocket fucking wrapped around the moon like a cartoon, now they just have a nuke hurtling toward a random spot on the Earth. And if that happened, they would have preferred that it at least not be an H-bomb, you know? But at this point in development, some serious problems, some of which really should have been very obvious before the government spent a bunch of money and assembled their ragtag group of Nazis and Carl Sagan to begin planning to nuke the moon, started to arise. For one, that whole real possibility of accidentally nuking some random spot on the Earth thing that I mentioned. Two, at this point, science wasn't like entirely sure that there wasn't life on the moon. I mean, no one had actually been there, you know, to visually see that there's not just a bunch of like camouflage shit going on. And they didn't have the technology to see if there's like microbes or little moon men under the surface and they didn't want to, eradicate an undiscovered lunar species for clout or unintentionally start a war with said moon men. 3, setting off a nuke on the moon might have made the goal of, landing there harder. For obvious reasons. I mean, it certainly would have at least altered the whole Neil Armstrong speech from,
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
To something more like one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. And also a massive dose of radiation poisoning for the man as well. Forgot about that. Ow, ow, owie, why am I glowing? Why am I green? Owie, owie, bobowie, yowza. Death noise. And for the very real possibility that the American public and the world in general might not actually think that the government nuking the moon would be that based. I mean, they never actually ran the focus groups here. It might be possible that the public aren't a bunch of megalomania-fueled Bond villains like the U.S. government, after all. And it might be, concerned slightly that we are nuking the moon and such. And eventually, it would be Carl Sagan himself who put the final nail in the nuclear coffin, as his job with the project was to study how the dust of the moon's surface would react to a nuclear bomb, mushroom cloud-wise. And he determined that since there is no atmosphere on the moon to be turned into a mushroom, there wouldn't actually be a mushroom cloud, and there would only be a flash of light from the moon. And even for that, there was only a chance that it would actually be visible from Earth. And so, the government begrudgingly decided, in a rare non-lapse of judgment, that the possibility of ruining humanity's chances of actually landing on the moon, nuking potential moon men, or possibly dropping a nuke on themselves, all for what would most likely be an incredibly expensive Looney Tunes debacle that the public might not even see at all, and even if they did see, might be incredibly pissed off about, especially if they, f***ed up and nuked said public on accident instead of the moon. It was just so slightly not worth the potential upside of really pissing off the Soviets. So slightly. And the Soviets also came to the exact same conclusions, but with backwards letters and more hard alcohol as far as their own nuke the moon plan went, and both countries decided to focus on other things, like their numerous proxy wars and whether Eisenhower or Khrushchev was the hotter sex symbol, and canceled their respective moon nuking programs. But you may be wondering, how do we even know all of this information in the first place? Well, we once again have our old television science man friend Carl Sagan to thank for that. Not because he felt compelled to tell the American public that its government wanted to nuke the moon, but because he, just like a 19-year-old broke-ass engineering student, wanted some money for college. You see, back in the mid-90s, a writer named Kay Davidson was researching Sagan for a biography on him, which involved digging back through his past activities, his search history, his DoorDash history, and also a certain request that Sagan made for a scholarship from UC Berkeley in 1959, in which Carl was very thorough laying out his credentials and included the US government paid me to figure out how we can nuke the moon thing. He was padding out that resume like it was a bra.
Not gonna lie, I really want to see that application. Like Eagle Scout, 500 hours of volunteer service, I had an internship with the DoD to blow up the moon. And why was this guy applying for scholarships anyways? He's one of 10 people on the planet you trust to shoot a nuke at the moon, and you're not gonna throw him a bone so he can finish out his doctorate?
Now, the Nuke the Moon project was referenced in 8 separate government documents, which they destroyed 7 of in a long theme of the US government not even being able to destroy evidence of it doing retarded shit correctly, and the discovery that Carl Sagan put "the government paid me to nuke the moon" on his scholarship application then led to a Freedom of Information request, which uncovered the one surviving Nuke the Moon document, which the government forgot to destroy. I guess they all went out for TGI Fridays 7/8 of the way through the shredding or something, and by the early 2000s, the public was finally informed that their government seriously planned and arranged to shoot a nuke at the moon. And while the United States did eventually decide to discreetly ditch the idea of nuking the moon like it was a red-headed nephew at a public park, the Soviets did still exist, and were in fact still communist. And everyone was still very lead poisoned, so obviously we did have to do something incredibly stupid that involved nukes and space. That was unavoidable. It had to be done. Which brings us to Project Starfish Prime. Because, as my grandmother always said, shoot for the stars and you might just nuke the moon. But if for whatever reason you don't end up nuking the moon, just send a nuke into space generally and really f up the ionosphere. Pass me that blanket, I'm cold. So it's 1962. Proto-hippies are forming, John F. Kennedy's head is still intact, and the US government was still very much losing the space race. The Soviets put the first satellite in space, then the first dog in space. That was super f***ed up, let's not talk about that. And then the first man into space. All while the US was still just sitting there in the cuck chair, watching the Soviets just absolutely hate the shit out of space, while America was continuously forced to get very sloppy space seconds. They were getting pissed, they were getting mad, they were getting strangely aroused, and they were getting very determined to finally do something to space before the Soviets. And because they were, again, just not very creative at all, they just decided to do the nuke thing again. They just did same thing. One day, someone in the government woke up and said,
I have got to get my dick sucked.
And then said, okay, let's do it. Let's finally do it. Let's nuke space. Carol, get the boys together and my good cigars. The one in the humidifier under my desk. No, that's Johnson's desk. My desk, the one to the left. Second drawer on the I'll get it myself, and promptly organized Operation Fishbowl. The main goal of this project was to conduct numerous high-altitude nuclear tests under the noble goal of seeing what would happen. You see, there are these two special little guys around the Earth called the Van Allen radiation belts, which are basically two bands of intense radiation from energetic particles trapped in Earth's magnetosphere. Now, these belts most likely serve some sort of essential function, as all things typically do, in the very delicate natural order that the Earth has been blessed with to sustain intelligent life. Maybe it holds the Earth's pants up. We don't know. So the US government wanted to see what happens if you blow up a nuke in there, which what is the deal with this see what would happen mindset, especially with nuclear weapons? Like, nothing good, right? Like, it's not like if you nuke the moon or blow up one of them in the middle of some band of radiation around the planet that it's suddenly gonna spark a cloudy with a chance of meatballs scenario and start raining burgers and pizza and pussy and rainbows all over the place. Actually, kind of the rainbows thing. That did kind of happen, but we'll get to that. But still, there's like a such a higher likelihood that what would happen is something like very, very bad, like civilization-endingly bad, right? The government was also worried that sending a nuke into this radiation belt might cause an electromagnetic pulse, an EMP, that could travel around the planet, wiping out electrical systems all around the world. So again, they just did it anyway, to see if it would do that bad thing that they don't want to happen. They wanted that they thought might happen if they shot a nuke into space. They did that to see if it would happen. You get what I'm getting at here. And this time, bomb-wise, they weren't f***ing around, okay? While the proposed bomb to land on the moon was that tiny Fallout-style mini-nuke, like 15 times less powerful than the Little Boy bomb dropped on Nagasaki, this one that they're going to shoot into space, into the radiation belt, was a 1.4 megaton behemoth, 100 times stronger than the Fat Man dropped on Hiroshima. And once again, they actually blew this one up this time. The bastards actually did it.
You maniacs! You blew it up!
And on July 9th, 1962, they strapped this baby to a Thor missile and sent it straight into the ionosphere, the place that makes radio work, stops us from being murdered by the sun, like literally microwaved by the sun, and allows for the
Aurora Borealis
to be
localized entirely within your kitchen.
The government launched this baby from a little, now very irradiated island called Johnston Atoll, 935 miles west of Hawaii. Hawaii. Do they say Hawaii? Is that what they call it there? Like Mexico? I'm not gonna look it up. And even though this explosion was happening 1,000 miles west and like way up in space, in the ionosphere, that whole EMP thing that they thought might happen, yeah, that happened. It did. They were correct. And a bunch of radios and streetlights and shit in Hawaii said, "I'ma head out," and then promptly headed out. They stopped working. But the streetlights thing, them going out, kind of a blessing in disguise, because the citizens of Hawaii were then treated to quite an enormous light show. Just like Carl Sagan figured out what happened on the moon, space also has no atmosphere, which means no mushroom cloud, but instead just a giant ball of glowing, color-changing plasma in the sky. And of course, a massive amount of radiation, which again was released in the level of the atmosphere where the funky dancing Alaska lights live, which created an insane aurora borealis for the people of Hawaii and a bunch of other places in the world that would not typically see the northern lights, as they are not in the northern area. Rare treats for them. Rare nuclear light show treat. And these weren't your typical northern lights either. These were like very quirked up northern lights. They were northern lights if they were directed by Michael Bay on bath salts, okay? They went hard. And the radiation in the ionosphere not only made a very kick-ass light show for the people of Hawaii, it also created an entirely new band of cancer around the planet. One of those Van Allen radiation belts. Yeah, the US government just unintentionally made a new one, just created an entire new cosmic phenomena that lasted for like 10 years and also immediately fried like half the satellites in space, just made them completely non-functional. Which, to be fair, this was 1962 and the first satellite wasn't even launched until like 1957, so half of the satellites around the planet probably meant, what, like 6? But still, what the fuck, guys? Come on. So, in terms of seeing what would happen when you launch a nuke into space, we got a massive EMP that hit Hawaii, an entirely new radioactive cancer belt around the Earth for 10 years, and, to be fair, a really dope-ass light show. So, I mean, in terms of how bad that could have been, I think we got pretty lucky there, honestly. Researching this video, I found plenty of other space-based Cold War lunacy and hijinks, so if you want me to talk about those as well, or if you know any yourself, please leave them in the comments. And it is now time for my bi-monthly shame sesh of begging for money. I'm broke, as you may notice. I'm in a new studio, if you can call it that. It's my bedroom. I no longer have an office. Because it's a long story that I probably shouldn't even get into for legal reasons, and I no longer have any money. So if you could donate some, that'd be so cool. I have QR codes on the screen to Venmo and Cash App. The name is just necessary information if you want to do it that way. I'd really appreciate it. Everybody's broke right now, so I get it if you can't, but just if you're not, if you happen to not be broke, I am. And it'd be so nice to not be. It'd be really nice. I appreciate it. Or you could always click that link in the description to support me on Patreon, like these dope-ass fellas, my god-tier patrons. Annette C., Covey, Revolver Oshawa, Totu, Marina at Mac Poetry, Stim Shady 1423, George W., Cannoli Rose, Bim Wafty, James W., Cameron J., Operator Metro, Chase B., DeAndre M., Al the Pal, The Duke of Earl, Shalom L., Arya and Calcifer, and Rena J. Thank you guys. Deeply and truly. And of course, me 20 buckaroos. 5D Pizza, Bonky Donor, Dark Duchess Nia, Tento Mon, Lando Calzone, Steffi D, Snagowski, Trent S, Blarg, Adam K, and Rare Bees. Thank you so much, guys. Keeping the channel alive at this point. And until next time, keep it crispy, stay informed, watch more of my videos. For the love of God, I really need the ad revenue. Please watch more of my videos and have just a grand old day. Bye-bye now. Ta-ta. Buenos noches. Watch my video. Please watch my videos.